Hey, Tameka, Dr. Tameka, I think your mic is muted.
Thank you okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So that means that everybody, they all missed the intro. Did you miss the intro?
Yes, I think
Yes.
we all did.
Okay.
Okay, that,
That's okay. Yeah. Well, I was so excited about this. And let me just say this. Let me just give a bit of the intro. What I was just talking about was the importance of having mentors in your life and how critical it is that if you want to grow in any kind of way in your life, no matter what that is, it is so important that you have people in your life that will tell you the truth about yourself, people in your life that will support you in everything that you do, people in your life that'll push you. And what I mentioned in the intro is that it's so important to have those individuals in your life because Dr. Angela has been that for me for many years. In honor of May being Mental Health Awareness Month, it is critically important that we talk about mental health. I myself have dealt with anxiety and depression in my life. And because of people like Dr. Angela, I've been able to get the help that I need and I'm able to manage my anxiety and depression. And it really changed my life. The reason why I'm so open about it is because I want to be able to be a vessel for someone else to step into that and change. And so the book that Dr. Angela wrote is a book that serves Black women. Oftentimes, Black women are too afraid to talk about mental health issues that they may be going through. They're too embarrassed. Black people, like in general, oftentimes don't talk about mental illness in our families, in our communities. And so this book was revolutionary when it first was written, and it still is today very revolutionary. And people are picking it up again because of the importance of wanting to know more about how to maintain yourself, how to thrive with yourself, and how to live with anxiety and panic and fear. And so I just want to say to Dr. Angela, thank you so much for being honest with me. Thank you so much for making me come out of the whale. And so,
yes.
yes, and so Dr. Angela, she and I met several months ago, and she had asked me how things were going with my business. And I told her that things were going well. And she asked me the kinds of work that I was doing. And as I was talking to her, I was sitting there and she's shaking her head, looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. And one of the things that was so critical about that conversation is because she called me to the carpet. She called me out. She said, you are doing the things that you believe you were supposed to be doing. Serving students that was a natural thing for you because you were an educator, but there's other things that you're called to do. And right now you're running. You're like Jonah, you're in the whale. And when Dr. Angela told me that, the only thing that I could do was to kind of take a step back, um, was to rethink some things because I knew that she was telling the truth. I was just honestly too afraid to step into my authentic purpose until after I had that conversation with her, because once it was in the air, there was no going back. Once it was out there, there was no going back. And so, Dr. Angela, I just want to thank you because you helped me make a total shift in my business and everything that I'm doing and the people that I'm serving. So I thank you. And that's if it weren't for you, this podcast would not be in existence. So I thank you.
You are welcome, and you're right. All of us need at least one person in our life
Yeah,
who will tell us the truth,
absolutely.
even when it's the uncomfortable truth. But
Yeah.
we need to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going to read your bio so that everyone can know about the amazing work that you do. Dr. Angela Neal-Barnett is a leading expert in Black mental health, emphasizing anxiety disorders among Black women and girls. Her latest efforts center around expected mothers, Black women in particular who may be suffering from PTSD or other stressors that can lead to increased preterm births, infant mortality, and mother mortality. Through her Spirit of Motherhood program, pregnant women and their school and their preschool children have received multi-level interventions for PTSD. Dr. Neal-Barnett founded and directs the program for research on anxiety disorders among African Americans, which currently receives funding from Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield Foundation, the American Psychology Association, Sisters of Charity Foundation in Cleveland, and the Women's Endowment Fund of Akron Community Foundation. Her work is embedded in the Akron, Canton, and Cleveland Black communities. In addition to her widely cited research publications, Dr. Neal-Barnett has been featured in Selena Gomez's Wonder Mind, Oprah Magazine, Essence, Fortune, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, and has appeared on NPR, MSNBC, BET, CNN, and ABC. And she's also the author of the book that we're going to be talking about today, Soothe Your Nerves, The Black Woman's Guide to Understanding and Overcoming Anxiety, Panic, and Fear, and a two-time contributor to the Harvard Business Review's Guide to Better Mental Health at Work. She serves as content expert for New York Times, the Harvard Business Review, and Idea Stream. Dr. Neal-Barnett received her BA in psychology from Mount Union and her Master's of Arts and PhD in clinical psychology from DePaul University. Dr. Neal-Barnett describes her work in the following way: whether it is designing intervention studies, disseminating research results, mentoring, encouraging, and advising current BIPOC students and early career faculty, or sharing about Black Americans and anxiety disorders on multiple national platforms, print, television, streaming, podcasts. Throughout my career, my purpose has never wavered, ensuring that Black Americans understand what anxiety is, how it is manifested, and that no matter what, they can reclaim their lives. And that is absolutely right. In that book, Soothe Your Nerves, I'm going to put it on I'm going to put the title of this on so that you all can see it and you can pick it up. Here it is for you. If you would like to get it, it's available on Amazon and lots of major different book platforms. I saw it on Thrift Book, on Barnes and Nobles. So please go out and take a look at it. It's an amazing book. And what I found quite interesting about when I read this book, this is actually Soothe Your Nerves. I did not read it until about a week before our interview. And what it helped me to understand was the book that I wrote that you endorsed for me. Back in 2019, I wrote a book called Make Fear Your Superpower. And Dr. Angela kindly endorsed that book for me. And what reading Soothe Your Nerves did for me was to validate some of the topics that I spoke about in Make Fear Your Superpower. I am not a psychologist or mental health expert, but at least it allowed me to see that I was on the right path, that the things that I was talking about in that book was on the right path based on experiences that I've had in my life based on fear. And so Soothe Your Nerves really gives a breakdown of ways that women can go about coping and being able to better understand themselves and what's happening to their bodies. And so we are here to discuss the book, of course, and you just discovered that a new generation is reading the book. And in the last month, the book has gone viral on TikTok. What has that been like for you? And what does that say about Black women and anxiety in 2023?
Well, it certainly tells us that anxiety and fear are still problematic.
Yeah, yeah.
That it's higher. I mean, between racism as a public health crisis and between COVID and us coming out of COVID, our anxiety is sky high.
Yeah.
And it's fun to hear. I get a lot of people who reach out to me who say, "Hey, do you know you're on TikTok?" and those kinds of things. And it's gone. Last month, it went viral twice. So it
Wow.
was quite. And people would send me what the influencer or what the psychologist was saying about the
Yeah.
book. It was really nice. But the main thing is people are finding out that they can reclaim their lives from an anxiety. And that's why I wrote the book. That's what I wanted, particularly Black women, to know.
Wow. Wow. Why were you inspired to become a psychologist? When I was reading the book, you had mentioned that early on you knew that you wanted to get into psychology. And so, can you take us on that journey of what was the decision that came with that?
Okay, so first of all, I have to be honest. I wanted to be Nancy Drew. I honestly did. And the only reason that I'm not is because I'm not blonde. And at the time, I didn't know what a roadster was. But I was like in sixth grade, and it was like you had to choose a career. So you
Yeah.
had to do all this research, and my friends were going to be like TV newscasters and uh, uh, supermodels and those
Mm,
kinds of things. And I was researching, and I came across psychology and what psychologists did. And I thought, this is what I want to do.
mm.
I just never, ever wavered from that from sixth grade on. I mean,
Wow.
the type of psychologist I thought I wanted to be is not the type of psychologist uh, that I am. I am a clinical research psychologist, and so rather than being a full-time therapist, I do interventions within the context of the research. And being a researcher is a lot like being a detective, so I got to be Nancy Drew anyway.
And so, for those of you that don't know who Nancy Drew is a fictional character that was from the book series, the Nancy Drew book series. And
Serious.
yes, yes. And so her and her gang would go around solving all these different mysteries. And so that's funny. Yeah, Nancy Drew. Her books, I think by the time I got to my teenage years, they started kind of, fading out by that time. But young people, if you're listening, you may not know who Nancy Drew is, but I'm sure her books are still available and they were entertaining back then, and I'm sure they'll be entertaining now.
Yes, 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 absolutely.
Yeah. So the history of enslavement caused different stereotypes about Black people. And one of those stereotypes is the strong Black woman, or better known as Sapphire. The
Mhm.
Sapphire trope was transformed over the years to the angry Black woman. Being a strong Black woman is a double edged sword in that it gives women the confidence they need to move forward, but it's bad because they're avoiding their mental and physical struggles. Can you discuss how the strong Black woman persona has been detrimental to Black women's health?
Oh, it really has. And again, as you've said, there are some wonderful things about being a strong Black woman. But it really does keep us from seeking help, or it keeps us in denial.
Yeah.
And we're embarrassed to say um, that something is wrong with us, that we are fearful, that we are anxious. Because, if you're not a strong Black woman, what are you? And that makes
Wow.
you're weak. And
Mm,
weak and a Black woman is an oxymoron for many of us. And
mm.
so uh, it is okay to be strong, but realize that part of that strength is acknowledging and asking for help.
And most of us don't know how to ask. We don't know how and we don't want to ask.
No, and part of that is remember that many of us, and you and I in particular, are oftentimes in all white settings or
Yeah.
predominantly white settings. So for us, we think erroneously if we ask for help, people will think less of us, or they'll see it as a opportunity to criticize our work or to mark us down in some way. So being in those predominantly white settings also kind of seals our lips because
Mm-hmm.
we're afraid. We're afraid what's going to happen to me if I ask for help. So there
Yeah.
are ways to ask privately. If you really believe that, there are ways to ask privately. Or, you can ask for help outside of your place of work or outside of your organization. I think one of the things that I see with millennials and with Gen Zers that they're far more open about this. They readily say, I have my hairdresser, my nail technician, and my counselor. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just part of their lives. They understand that a little better than our generation do.
Yeah, yeah. And what you were saying about going and seeking help outside, that's what I did. And if I had not done that, I know for sure I would not have been as successful as I was with my academic career. Um, as Dr. Angela mentioned, being in white spaces, oftentimes you don't feel like you can, even if you do ask for help, you don't feel like you can trust the help that you're going to be getting.
Yes. Yeah.
It's best to find your tribe elsewhere, and that's what I was able to do, and that's what Dr. Angela was for me. She was a part of my tribe that I went to seek out, and get help, because we do need help, and we need to know how to ask for help. Yeah, and so in the chapter entitled "What Must Other People Think," you
Yes.
discuss a woman by the name of Maya, who
Mhm.
is beautiful and smart as you described her, but she's paralyzed to achieve in her career and in her love life for fear of being judged, embarrassed, and humiliated. Can you discuss what you call social anxiety and the consequences of caring too much about what other people think?
Yes. Well, social anxiety, and sometimes you'll hear people call a lot of times actually, you'll hear people call it social phobia. And
Mm,
it is really what will or what must other people think, or
yeah,
I think that other people think X, Y, and Z about me.
yeah,
And social phobia is not just about being negatively evaluated, but you get people who, if you're positively evaluated, they also have social phobia because
right.
the spotlight is turned on onto them. And again, when you are lonely as a Black woman, okay, it's natural for us to think that way into in some regards. But what happens is when it prevents us from doing the things we were meant to do, when we are stopped in our tracks, when we won't go places because we wonder about what other people
Hmm.
think, when it's interfering in our lives, then that's problematic. And social phobia is one of the most common forms of anxiety, and we can treat it. And that's what people need to know. You're not you're never so bad that treatment will not work. You
Wow,
never get to that point. Okay,
wow.
we know how to treat social phobia, social anxiety, so that you are able to do the things that you want to do and to be the person both in your personal and in your professional life that you want to be.
Yeah. I think one of the best days of my life is when I started on the journey of getting to a point where I didn't really care much about what people thought. It's such a freeing thing when you can live your life not worried about judgment. This whole shift that I've made, leaving academia and stepping into um, an entrepreneurial endeavor, and having to, and I'm really open about my story, but having to leave my marriage and everything else. I mean, I got to the point where I had to follow what it was, and I knew the creator was telling me to do, regardless of what other people were saying, because people thought I was crazy, for leaving and for changing up my life like that. But it's really important that we get to a point in our lives where we care less about what other people think.
I think that that's true for people with social phobia. We may not get to the point where they care less about what other people think, but they're at the point where they can do the things, and
Mm, mm,
sometimes they're doing it afraid, but it's with less fear and more confidence, and knowing that the thing that they think is going to happen does not happen. Or
yeah,
if it does, they learn to say, so what?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. The book, you also discuss colorism.
Mhm.
And colorism, for those that may not know what that term means, it was a term that was coined by Alice Walker, who defined colorism as prejud- pre, prejudicial, I'm sorry, prejudicial or preferential treatment for some race
Yeah.
people based solely on their color. So basically, it's the preferential treatment of someone based on the color of their skin, typically light skinned Black people getting preferential treatment over darker skinned Black people. And would you say that colorism is something that has impacted Black women more than Black men?
Actually, the research says no. It
Mm,
just impacts it in different ways.
mm,
So for Black women, colorism is really tied up into beauty,
yeah,
and uh, and uh, the adage in social psych is that what is beautiful is good,
yeah,
and so historically, again, if from the earliest times of enslavement, there was this separation by color, uh,
yeah,
and house and field slaves, and house slaves tended to be those who were of lighter skin. Once we got to the Reconstruction period, what we found was that those um, those individuals who were formerly enslaved and were now able to go to school and get degrees, that oftentimes it was those who were of lighter skin
mhm,
or mixed race, basically.
mhm, mhm.
And then when we get to like the 40s and the 50s, what we see is, if you go back and you look at the old Essence, I'm sorry, old Ebony magazine, old Jet magazines, you'll find that the fashion fair models and the Jet Beauty of the Week were again tended to be fairer skinned women. So, and that even department stores, if they would hire somebody who was Black, the person who most looked like uh, the people in power was the one who was put in front, and then darker skinned women were put in the back.
Wow.
And we can go on and on about what we see
Yeah.
videos and all those kinds of things. So for Black women, it really is about beauty. It is skin colors. Colorism is tied to beauty.
Yeah.
That causes divides between uh, darker and lighter skinned women. And often that can create, for some women, both who are lighter and those who are darker, um, social phobia, social anxiety.
Yeah. Wow. Do you think we'll ever get to the point in our lives where those things don't matter anymore?
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice.
Wouldn't that be absolutely wonderful? But as long as racism exists,
Yeah.
and as long as people internalize some of that racism, it's just a difficult road. It's not impossible, but internalized racism makes it difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, you were discussing in the book a lady by the name of Miss Honey.
Miss
And Miss Honey,
Miss
you said,
Honey, oh,
yeah, you were talking about the fact that she suffered from OCD.
yes,
And you also mentioned the fact that Black women suffering from OCD, um, they suffer longer than
yeah,
any other group. And the idea of hoarding in most cases, when we think about hoarding,
yeah,
typically this is seen as an issue that only white people deal with.
yeah,
And mostly because this is what we see on television. You know, when we see those TV shows, hoarders, it's
yeah,
mostly white people,
yeah,
because a Black person, a Black woman in particular, would
yeah,
rather die than have somebody know that, she was a hoarder. And
yeah.
so, can you talk about the how detrimental this is, when we talk about OCD and other things, and how we will rather die than to talk about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I, I, I can still see that that house. I mean, there was a school bus on the front yard, and it was piled full of newspapers, very neatly stacked, all those kinds of things. But uh, everybody just thought she was idiosyncratic. I mean,
Mm,
I ever thought it was problematic, and we do. I mean, we are most like Black Americans are most likely to cover or excuse the
mhm.
the manifestations of anxiety that we see in other Black people. I mean, again, the story is the fire chief's on the front
Mhm.
and he's berating everybody. And my mom, steps up and tells him that, uh, that he's wrong and just really just tells him off in her pillar of the community voice. Um, and so we don't, and we get people who have panic attacks and they become agoraphobic, which is not a fear of open spaces, but a fear of having a panic attack and not getting out or not being able to get out or get help. And so we see Black people who then never leave their homes. And
Mm.
nobody's, it's like, well, I don't know when the last time I've seen them out, but they'll say, wait, can you stop by the store and bring me X, Y, and Z? And family members do it.
Yeah.
So we not only don't we tell, but we are very good at compensating or covering up for other Black women's anxiety, as
Wow.
opposed to encouraging them to seek help or help them seek help.
Mm. Yeah, because I remember in the book you were talking about how Miss Honey got to a point where she wouldn't let anybody come over to her house.
Yeah,
She
no,
was
right?
she was Yeah, she was always going out, or whenever her daughter would pick her up, she would always pick her up right on the porch.
Well,
Her daughter didn't even know.
yeah, and it took again, yes, everything, and I mean, Miss Honey thought diamonds were common, but she had row. I cannot tell you, there were rows and rows and drawers of emeralds and rubies and sapphires. I mean, you know, I don't wear diamonds because of Miss Honey. Because, but I mean that. But she was hoarding. I mean, she was. I mean, she was hoarding.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about several different types of issues that Black women may go through. And now let's talk a little bit about some solutions to anxiety that Black women might have right at their fingertips, literally. So these solutions, of course, don't take the place, and this is a disclaimer. The solutions that we're going to be talking about don't take the place of therapy, but
No,
if you are someone who is suffering from anxiety, these are some things that you can do immediately
yes.
to help you with the anxiety. And in the book, you talked about the fact that meditation and visualization were really important. Prayer was really important to helping people cope with anxiety. Can you talk a little bit about? You said, I think in the book, you were talking about the fact that it was scientifically proven that does help with the healing.
Okay.
Yes.
Prayer does help with the feeling. I will remind people that faith without works is dead. And so that prayer is just one piece of of the healing. But prayer centers us. And for many people, prayer in some form calms us.
Mm,
When we can be centered and calm, we can make decisions about help and about healing. Um, we know that prayer is a form of mindfulness.
yeah.
And so, again, we know that mindfulness in various forms is helpful for anxiety. But we know that if it's the anxiety that is interfering with your life, that is stopping you from doing the things you want to do, then we're looking at something called cognitive behavioral therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy with medication.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what that is? So for people that don't know what that means.
Cognitive behavioral therapy is your mind is therapy that uh, actually puts together your mind and your body. When we are anxious, I mean, we feel it in here. When you ever had a panic attack, it is a physical thing. You start breathing hard. You might feel numb. You might go from hot to cold to cold to hot. You might feel tingling. You think you are going crazy. You think you are going to die.
Oh,
Uh, Once those physical things, those physical sensations dissipate, what keeps you anxious is your mind. So, in cognitive behavioral therapy, you learn how your body, your actions, and your mind combine to make you anxious or to help you overcome anxiety. So, one of the best forms of cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT is something called exposure.
mm,
Okay? And exposure is you doing the thing that makes you afraid.
oh,
Because what most of us don't know is that anxiety can only go so high and then it comes down.
ah.
So we don't, so if we're anxious and we're not doing it, we don't learn it. Or if we start trying to do it and flee the situation, then we've not learned that it will go so high and come down. So doing exposure therapy, a form of CBT, doing in gradual steps the things that make you anxious, the things that make you afraid, actually reduces the anxiety.
Wow. Would you say that anxiety, the root of anxiety is fear? Um,
They're two different things. I guess let me say, everybody's got a cousin. Anxiety's cousin is fear. Okay. So, um, anxiety is this perception of some type of future threat. So you don't know when, you don't know where, you don't know how. You just believe that something bad is going to happen. Even though you have no evidence that it,
mhm.
you still, that's what you believe. Fear is an emotion that's experienced in the presence of an immediate or an imminent threat. So if I
Mm,
heights, and I go to the Hancock building, I'm not going in that elevator and going up because I just know something bad is going to happen to me. So,
mm,
yeah, so imminent, immediate fear, future threat is anxiety.
wow. Would you say that anxiety is a spectrum? And the reason why I say that is because as I was reading Soothe Your Nerves, it sounded like different women have different forms or different levels of anxiety.
So I wouldn't call it a spectrum, but I would say there is a cluster of anxiety disorders.
Mm,
So, there are phobias, and you can have all sorts of people have blood phobias, height phobias. Flood and heights are two of the most common phobias that people have. Flying is a phobia. You can have social phobia or social anxiety, which is in the social situations. You can have obsessive compulsive disorder, um, which is that you have the thought and then you do an action. You have the thought and then you do the action. So people who wash their hands all the time because they have this contamination fear, or are hoarders is a technically a subset of obsessive compulsive disorder. And then we have something called generalized anxiety disorder, which is the what ifs, or people, if you know somebody who was always worried about something,
mm,
have a generalized anxiety disorder. So there are different types of um, anxiety disorder, but a spectrum suggests that one is it might be more one might be more harsher or than the other, and that's just not true. So I would think about it in what type of anxiety disorder do I have, and what is the best way to treat this particular anxiety disorder.
wow. Wow. Well, Dr. Angela, we've come to the end of our interview, and I want to make sure that people can stay connected with you. I see that you do have that looks like your website.
My
Um,
website's
there.
up,
Yes.
and
Um,
you're able to email me from the website.
okay.
You can do that. I am a professor of psychological sciences at Kent State. So if you call the psychology department, you can reach me through the psychology department at Kent State as well. And you can DM me on Twitter. It's at Dr. Angela, and Angela is with a J, uh, on Twitter. And please don't be, if I've said something that's inspired you or made you think or has you thinking, I really want to reach out and get help, please, by all means, do. Um,
Yeah. And I'm going to add your website, drangelanealbarnett.com is the website. So if you would like to get in touch with Dr. Angela, you can go right to her website. Wow, this was a wonderful conversation. I I don't know how to thank you. You've changed my life in so many ways.
you're welcome.
Um, and I just appreciate you so much. And I know that the work that you're doing will continue on. So many Black women will be helped and continue to be helped by the work that you do. And so I'm so proud to just say that I know you.
Thank, uh, thank you. And I think the best way that anyone can thank me is to pay it forward
Absolutely.
and to live the life that the Creator meant for you to live. And so if I've done things or said things that have allowed you to do that, then that is just so satisfying and gratifying to me.
Oh, wow. I thank you. And um, I wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you again for being with us this evening, and peace and blessings. I'm sure I'll speak with you again soon.
It, I know you will. And the last thing I want to say is
Yeah.
you do to everybody, anybody who's out there who's listening with anxiety, is that it's treatable and you can reclaim your life.
Yes. I'm a witness. I'm definitely a witness. So thank you, Dr. Angela.
Take care.
Bye bye. So that was a total honor for me. Dr. Angela um, means a lot to me and has evolved my life in lots of ways. And I just appreciate her so much. But um, on this podcast, I often do talk about some of the research that went into preparing myself so that I can have this conversation. Today, I brought the research right to you. The book, Soothe Your Nerves, The Black Woman's Guide to Understanding and Overcoming Anxiety, Panic, and Fear. Please go and pick this book up. It's an easy read. If you don't worry about being that the book might be too academic or something like that, the book is an easy read. Anybody can pick it up and glean some valuable information from this book. And what I love about it is Dr. Angela gave some amazing examples of people that she's known and met in her life via personal life or people that she's worked with in her lab. And so that those examples bring this whole idea of anxiety to the forefront, and it makes it become something that's very, very real that people deal with. And I just appreciate the book. Please go out and take a look at the book. This episode of the Black Beauty Activist podcast was brought to you by my book, Make Fear Your Superpower. If you have not picked up this book, please go and pick it up. It's on Amazon. And Dr. Angela, again, was someone who endorsed the book when I first published it back in 2019. Make Fear Your Superpower has sold hundreds of books so far, which I'm really proud of. This book has changed many people's lives. I've had people come to me later on after reading the book to let me know how important this book has been for them. In Make Fear Your Superpower, I break down 9 different types of fears that we all go through. And we spoke about some of those fears today, anxiety being one of those things, the fear of humiliation and making mistakes being another. I mean, we all make mistakes. You know, when I first started this podcast today, I was on mute, which, and Dr. Angela quickly told me it's okay because she knew that, I might have gotten a little upset about that. But again, We all make mistakes. There's no reason to be humiliated by it. And Make Fear Your Superpower will walk you through lots of different ways that you can cope, that you can overcome, and really be able to thrive in some of those fears. I consider myself a pretty fearless person. Not saying that I don't live with fear, but what I'm saying is that I may have fear about something, about doing a new thing, but I don't let that fear stop me. And I think that it's really important that if you are wanting to do anything new in your life, that you take it upon yourself to evaluate your fear and then move through that fear, and not let that fear stagnate you, because that's really what fear does. It is a stagnating feeling that will keep you from moving anywhere in your life that you might want to go. And again, this is the cover of the book. If you would like to pick it up, Soothe Your Nerves, The Black Woman's Guide to Understanding and Overcoming Anxiety, Panic, and Fear by Dr. Angela Neal-Barnett. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. I also saw it on Thrift Books and some other major book platforms. Go ahead and check it out. And I just want to say thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you leave a comment on YouTube. Share it with those people in your circle who you believe will benefit. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Black Beauty Activist. And always remember, on the other side of fear is your beautiful confidence. Peace and blessings, everyone.